Who wants to win the NFC South? Tampa doesn't seem to want to do it. Carolina loses with a golden opportunity on Sunday. It's Locked On Panthers. It's Locked On Bucs on this Locked On NFL crossover Thursday.
You are Locked On NFL crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome into another edition of the Locked On Panthers and Locked On Bucs podcast. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, talking Carolina Panthers and Tampa Bay Buccaneers with you every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and yes, of course, Friday, your team every day. That's our motto here on the Locked On Podcast Network, the #1 sports network in America and, of course, in all of the world. Thank you for watching our show here on YouTube and listening wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. Today is Crossover Thursday, and that is presented by our friends over at PrizePicks. Download the PrizePicks app today and use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. A massive game in the NFC South this Sunday, 1 o'clock Eastern time in Uptown Charlotte, as the 7-7 Tampa Bay Buccaneers visit the 7-7 Carolina Panthers. Both teams potentially two of the right wins away from being division champions. James Yarcho, while that is being said, it seems like over the last 10 days, neither one of these teams wants to win the division. As Tampa, they lost in New Orleans and lost on Thursday night to Atlanta. Carolina celebrating having that half-game lead, being in sole possession of first place for the first time since December of 2015, then goes out and lays an egg against the Saints. So I ask you, does anybody want to win this division?
No. Why would they? Who wants to win this division to have the Monday night playoff game, which is still an abomination and the worst decision the NFL has ever made, to host the Seahawks or the 49ers? Like, nobody wants to do that. Just let us go on our vacations and spend time with our families, because that's not going to end well. But, Ross Jackson, of course, of Locked On Saints, he and I, we took our victory lap. Because in our divisional preview, he and I were the ones that said, watch out for the Panthers. We have faith that this Panthers team can actually make some noise and finish better than the Atlanta Falcons. So they're right where I thought they were going to be, but I still don't know what this team is, because you lose to the Saints twice, you lose to the Cardinals, but then you could beat the Rams and you can win at Lambeau. Like, I don't understand what is happening this season. It's never a dull moment in the NFC South.
No, it's confounding. It certainly is. And I recall telling Austin Corbett, who will be starting at right guard for Carolina this Sunday after they beat the Rams, like, you guys sure have not been boring this season, man, because it's been up and down all year long, really since week 7 after they had their 3-game win streak against Miami, against Dallas, and then against the Jets. They've gone from losing to winning to losing, winning to losing over the last 2 months. It's just been that yo-yo of win-loss results. And currently, the pattern would be for them to win this week, lose next week, and then win in week 18. And if they do that, they win the division. So maybe all is well in Carolina. And I was having a mailbag episode actually on Wednesday, and somebody asked me, would fans feel better about this team had they flipped the results, had they swept New Orleans, but then lost to Green Bay and then lost to the Rams? Maybe, but then you would have no signature wins, and you would basically know that, okay, this team they're better, but they clearly can't beat anybody that's any good. So there probably would be zero confidence in their ability to beat, Seattle next week, but maybe even Tampa Bay this week in this game. They'd also be in a better position because they'd be 4-0 in a division. And they would only need to win one of these games in all likelihood, because if they are both tied at 9-8, they split these games, Tampa's going to win the common opponent tiebreaker, which Carolina, right now, they don't have that. So maybe they'd be in a better spot. That's a good question. It's been a confounding team. They're just not mature enough yet in this second year of the rebuild between Dave Canales and with Dan Morgan as the general manager to get over the hump at this point in time. But the Bucs, they have been mature over the last couple of years, having won this division basically every year over the last few seasons. What's going on, man? Because like Todd Bowles, he was dropping 7 F-bombs at the game on Thursday. Baker, he's ticked off. Mike Evans, who just got back, is crashing out on the sideline. What the hell is going on down in Tampa?
There is a lot of frustration by coaches and players that's kind of bubbling over the surface now. You saw it with Todd Bowles' press conference, and Todd Bowles is the most relaxed, laid-back dude, I think,
Sure.
in the history of the NFL. And for him to have that kind of reaction, I think that was a sign that he knows that the writing is on the wall. Even if the Bucs win this game and they beat Miami and they clinch the NFC South, he's not guaranteed a job. In fact, I do not think that he is returning as the Buccaneers head coach next season.
Wow.
Because you can't just keep doing just enough to make the playoffs. You have to take a step forward. And this was supposed to be that year. This was supposed to be the year where they're competing with the Rams and the Eagles atop the NFC. And instead, they're 1-5 since the bye week, with their one win barely happening against the Arizona Cardinals in their own house. So this is not a good situation now. And you go back to the history of the Glazers and their ownership of this team. They fired Tony Dungy for much less than what Todd Bowles has done now. Dungy was making the playoffs. He just couldn't beat the Eagles.
Mm-hmm.
Todd Bowles, he's got one playoff win as a head coach, and it was against the Eagles. He lost the first playoff game since like 1904 to the Dallas Cowboys with Tom Brady as his quarterback. You get bounced to a rookie quarterback last year. This was a make or break season for Todd Bowles, and it's got a lot of people wondering, should they have already moved on and promoted Liam Cohen, seeing what he's doing with the Jacksonville Jaguars? They tried. Cohen snuck out, but did they hold on to Bowles just 1 year too long?
Wow. And yeah, because Cohen was going to stay. He said he was going to stay. And then he wouldn't answer his phone because he was going to take another job up north there in Jacksonville. So, wow. Yeah, that's interesting to hear. And that I would think would be a pretty coveted job, considering you have a quarterback that's been a playoff team, maybe another playoff team again this year. The general manager's been there forever. So, yeah. Okay. Well, in Carolina, the coach is not going to get fired after this season, even if they somehow go from being 7-6 and having a half game lead going in that game last Sunday against New Orleans to losing their final 4 games, which certainly is a possibility for this team. I think 7-10 would be something that obviously an improvement from last year when they were 5-12. And then sitting at this point last year, they were like 3-11. So hell, I mean, that's a good start. That's good. I mean, that's good to bounce back from that spot. Now, obviously, it would feel pretty rough for the fan base and obviously for the organization if you go from 7-6 to having a half game lead, heading that week 15 game to then losing your final 4 games, especially one against New Orleans, that there's just no excuse to lose that. But they have obviously gotten better. They're a team, if you look at it, they don't rush the passer at all. They have not really been balanced offensively aside from the game against the Rams and the win also against Dallas earlier this season. Bryce has had his own Jekyll Hyde nature as well. And despite all of that, here they are. They sit at 7-7 with the biggest home game they've had since, 2017, possibly, when they played Minnesota late in that year. And that kind of helped them wrap things up. So it's a huge game for them. And I know the fan base this week they're trying to get off the mat because they were so excited last Thursday going in Friday morning off of that Atlanta win against Tampa, then just the letdown of Sunday. It's just one of the things, like, the players have to refocus. And they've said that. Fan base also, like, it's a little bit different for them because obviously they don't get ready to go out and play a game. It's one of the things where, like, can they just figure it out? Does it have to always be the up and down? Does it always have to be a massive letdown just when you get your hopes up? So we'll see if this team, who apparently Dave Canales said this week has the right focus. And I should have followed up and been like, well, what did you see last week? Because I saw they were laser focused last week too. And then they lost to the Saints again. I don't know what it is, man, but will Carolina be mature enough to win this game on Sunday? We will see. Now, there's some matchups that we got to look at in this game, James, that will decide whether either one of these teams actually will win the NFC South, which it has to happen. They just can't decide to opt out and not go to the playoffs. Someone is going to win this division out of these two teams. We'll go over some of those matchups here in just a moment on this Locked On NFL crossover Thursday edition of Locked On Panthers and Locked On Bucs. This episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. The holiday season is one of the best times for sports. Bowl games, big basketball matchups, playoff pushes like the ones the Panthers and Bucs are in right now. It's all happening at once. And while we're all making choices every day, one of the most fun places to make the right call is PrizePicks. PrizePicks is the easiest way to get in on daily fantasy. Just pick more or less on at least 2 player projections, lock in your lineup, and you're in the game. It's simple, fast, and available in 45 states, including California, Texas, North Carolina, South Carolina, and of course down there in Florida. PrizePicks has added an extra layer of excitement to the holiday sports schedule. Creating a lineup takes less than a minute, and the app makes the whole process smooth and intuitive. Deposits and withdrawals are quick and easy, which makes everything keep flowing. Download the PrizePicks app today and use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, it's good to be right. Back here on this Locked On NFL crossover Thursday edition of Locked On Panthers and Locked On Bucs. Julian, Council, James Yarcho taking a look at this massive matchup between the 7-7 Panthers, 7-7 Bucs in Uptown Charlotte on Sunday afternoon. Looking at matchups, James, what are you looking at that will either tilt the game to the Bucs' favor or maybe something that could lead to their demise on Sunday?
Well, I do want to say real quick, is this the marquee matchup of the week on NFL Sunday? Like, you take a look at some of these matchups, and it's like the big ones to me are on Saturday, Thursday and Saturday. Like, Bucs Panthers might be the biggest game on Sunday this week in the NFL in terms of playoff implications. So,
because we have Bears Packers right on Saturday.
Yeah,
I feel like I never know the Thursday night game until it actually happens. Oh wow, Rams Seahawks. Okay, so actually we'll have to turn off and go find that. Eagles Commanders could not care less.
Bills, Browns, Chargers, Cowboys, Mahomes,
doesn't matter anymore.
Chiefs and Titans. Like, this is
Broncos Jags. Broncos Jags is a big one now because both.
Yeah, but that's a 4:00 slate. So you can watch both. Everybody needs to be dialed into this game. This is the game of the week. I'm calling it right now.
Okay, James Yarcho says it's the game of the week. All right, James, tell me then, what's the matchup you're looking for here in the game of the week? At least for 1 o'clock.
Yeah, the big one that I'm looking at is Bucky Irving versus this Panthers run defense. And look, the Panthers run defense did a solid job against the Saints, but they allowed 152 rushing yards to the Rams, 147 to the Niners, 125 to the Falcons, and then that first meeting with New Orleans allowed 122. So the Bucs have to run the ball effectively to try and not only control the tempo of the game, but then you want to take that home crowd out of it. You just mentioned this could be their biggest home game in almost 10 years, but you also want to keep a struggling Buccaneers defense on the sideline. So Baker is still playing through injury. He's not doing it very well. So you want to minimize the risk against a defense that's really opportunistic. They have 12 interceptions on the season. And we know Baker has a propensity to turn the ball over at the worst time. See Thursday Night Football last week. Now, while Bucky has looked solid since returning from injury, he's still averaging 2 yards less per carry than he did that rookie season. Some of that has to do with the offensive line, with the run blocking, because they are missing, 2 of their starters there. But some of it has to do with him not getting those chunk plays that we saw last year when he was breaking off 20, 30, 40-yard runs. It's going to be crucial to make sure that he's carrying the load for the offense in this game to try to minimize how often the Bucs defense is on the field, but also just to slow the game down, because I feel like this is a race to 30. Whoever gets to 30 points first is going to win this one. And, I have faith in both of these teams to be able to do that.
Yeah, and you bring up the games that Carolina's given up a decent amount of rushing yardage. The games against New Orleans, those two, honestly, like they gave up 2 explosives on the ground in both those games. Like the run is not really what killed them at all. Even on Sunday, and you look at the game against Atlanta, the last time they played down in Atlanta, Bijan Robinson was doing his thing in the first half. Then in the second half, they shut the Falcons down. So like that, the run really was not much of an issue. The Rams game certainly was. The Rams' biggest issue was they turned the ball over 3 times, including a pick 6 there by Mike Jackson. The one team, I guess the 2 teams I think that really actually truly ran the ball well against Carolina was Buffalo. I mean, you look at it, there's no way you can try to explain away what happened that Sunday. And then Jacksonville in week 1. Overall, though, I think this has been much improved. But you have to be when you gave it 3,000 yards on the ground last year. This has been a much better run defense than they were a year ago. But they can have their moments. And Bucky Irving, he got after them last year, especially in that first game in Charlotte, where in that second half, he took over, really, the fourth quarter and overtime. Like, he went out there and did his thing. So we'll see how they're able to bounce back there against him. I'm also looking at the matchup between Jaycee Horn / Mike Jackson and Mike Evans, because Mike came out and looked really good last Thursday night in that game, especially for a guy who had missed a ton of time. And you knew that in the final couple of weeks of the year that he was going to be a key piece to what the Bucs wanted to achieve, whether it be just winning the NFC South, potentially doing something more, which sounds like you don't really think is going to be the case, which I can understand considering where they're at right now. But Dave Canales did tell us on Wednesday, this is an officiating crew that calls a lot of pass interferences. So can Baker Mayfield, Mike Evans take advantage of that? And can Jaycee Horn and Mike Jackson, the Panther secondary overall, avoid some of those mistakes? Because they had 11 penalties last week for 103 yards. That was the killer in that game. Going into it, they were the third least penalized team in the NFL. Coming out of it, they're the 8th most penalized team in the NFL. So this still is not a team that takes a lot of penalties or gets called for a lot of penalties. So I'm very interested in that matchup in this game, as well as, Baker's got weapons. Carolina, they've been solid in the secondary. It just will be interesting to see how that officiating aspect. I'm not trying to say the refs are going to be the reason the Panthers win or lose this game. That's loser behavior. I don't do that here. My folks know that. I don't want to hear about complaining about the refs, but that's just an element just about how physical they can be against one of the most physical receivers in the league.
Well, the good news for Panthers fans is in the last game, the Bucs, they were only penalized 4 times for 25 yards. The Falcons, 19 penalties for 125 yards and still won the game. So if you get a couple of defensive pass interferences called against Jaycee Horn early in this game, don't worry. Don't freak out. Don't stress it. The Bucs will find a way to give you those yards back in one way, shape, or form. I am really interested in that matchup because Mike did look good. He had 6 receptions on 12 targets. Not all of those targets were catchable. Emeka Egbuka, he caught all of his catchable targets. No quarterback in the NFL has more uncatchable passes this year than Baker Mayfield because he is dealing with those injuries. He's got the oblique, he's got the knee, he's got the separated shoulder. He is a hot mess right now. But he's a tough dude. We know he's going to be out there on the field. As far as the other thing that I'm looking at, it's the complete opposite when I take a look at this Bucs defense, and that is you got to slow down the Panthers rushing attack. Rico Dowdle has been that dude for the Carolina Panthers, and I talked about the Panthers allowing rush yards. The Bucs, 111, 139, 95, and 70 rush yards allowed in their last 4 games. They were really the ones that kickstarted this Travion Henderson, I'm going to go for 60-yard touchdowns every single week thing, because he did it twice against Tampa. They're 24th in rushing touchdowns allowed, and that's to say they've allowed the 9th most. Not that they're down at the bottom because they're not allowing a lot. They're 29th in the NFL in explosive runs allowed. That's where I'm really concerned. This is a team that has always been stout against the run. And the fact that they're allowing numerous explosive plays on the ground each and every week is really concerning. I expect a heavy dose of Tommy Tremble because tight ends have been chewing up the Bucs all year. And then I'm also interested to see how Teteroa McMillan plays. If he plays, I know he didn't practice on Wednesday. I'm guessing that's more of a maintenance thing than actually being in danger of missing. But, Egbuka and Teteroa, this could decide who wins Offensive Rookie of the Year unless Travion Henderson keeps doing what he's doing. But those guys have been it's been the tale of 2 seasons. Egbuka started off hot. Teteroa started off slow. Now they've kind of flip-flopped. This could be a game where one gets the one up over the other in that Offensive Rookie of the Year race.
Yeah, McMillan's really been a godsend, and I would disagree. I think he's since week 1 he's been their guy, and had they not drafted him there in the top 8, Carolina's receivers would have been a mess because Leggett has not taken any step forward this year. They missed Coker for about 6 weeks this season. He's come along, recently had another touchdown reception on Sunday in that loss against New Orleans. But yeah, McMillan, he's fine. He got rolled up on apparently on Sunday. He didn't practice because he's dealing with a foot and ankle. Talked to him in the locker room. So if he was not going to play, wouldn't really talk to us. Now, Ike Ekwonu also talked to us, and he's somebody who is actually in danger of not playing as he has a knee injury. He had an MRI. So there's actually something there. So he's going to try to give it a go. But we'll see as far as that goes. But everybody else is pretty good. Now, Turk Wharton, he tripped over a teammate during walkthrough last weekend and injured his hamstring. He did not practice on Wednesday, so he may not be out again this week. It is interesting, though, you bring up the run game, because that is absolutely like a matchup I'm looking at as well for Carolina. Dave Canales wants to run the ball, and it's so interesting. It's so interesting saying that, because he said, like, when he got here, he wanted to be stubborn about running the football. And he had a game a couple weeks ago on Monday night where Rico Dowdle and Chuba Hubbard had 9 carries, which is just ridiculous. Now, the next week against the Rams, he corrected that, but they didn't run the ball well when he was the OC in Tampa. They ran it much better last year in Carolina, and they've ran it well at points in time so far this season. But if you look at Rico recently, he really hasn't been that guy. I want to hear from all the Panther fans who wanted to go out and give him an extension in the middle of the season when he looked like one of the best backs in the league. But since they left Green Bay, didn't do anything against New Orleans, didn't do anything against Atlanta as far as running the ball on the ground, didn't do anything against San Francisco. That's coaching problem. Had a solid game against the Rams. It really was Chuba Hubbard who was the better back. And then on Sunday again against New Orleans, didn't really do anything. So I don't know if he's hit a wall necessarily, or just been, you're going up against teams like the Saints who sold out to stop the run, but he has not been the same guy that we saw who carried this offense against Miami, against Dallas, against Green Bay as well. He was awesome throughout that 5-game stretch, but since then, the last 5 weeks, hasn't really been that way. So will they be able to find some balance between him and Chuba? Will Rico kind of step back in that role where he still got more carries this past Sunday, but haven't seen the burst that we had saw in the middle part of the season when Hubbard was out and Rico Dowdle looked like the best back in the league behind Jonathan Taylor, who's been awesome. So that's something to look out for as well. So good call by you there as far as looking at how that'll play out. And Rico did say that Vita Vea, that's a lot of man to try to run through.
Yeah, I get the feeling we're going to get shades of like Jonathan Stewart, D'Angelo Williams kind of tandem against this Bucs defense this year. Shades of 2008. And that infamous Monday night game where the Panthers just ran for 8,000 miles on that Buccaneers defense.
Yeah, Jay Stu, he'll be up there in the press box. So I know he's going to hope to see something like that he was able to do with D'Angelo. So those are the matchups we're looking at. What about the keys victory for both these teams? We'll go over those here in just a moment on this Locked On NFL Crossover Thursday edition of Locked On Panthers and Locked On Bucs. All right, keys to victory when looking at this game. And let me pull a FanDuel for a second here and look at what now FanDuel still has Tampa favored to win the division, which I'm not surprised by.
By
even
a wide
after,
margin.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Even I went live, James, after the Bucs lost last Thursday. I was like, I'm going to take advantage of this, and I don't typically record my Friday episodes until after the injury report comes out, because I'll go to the facility, talk to Dave one final time, get the injury report. I don't want to speculate on who's going to be there, who's not going to be. So I wait until 3:00 until people get it. I didn't want to leave anybody hanging because look, it was one of those exciting things that happened a long time around here. And even then they still had Tampa favored. And looking at it right now, Tampa is minus 425, Carolina plus 330 to win the division this year. And then you look at the game
even over the last 24 hours.
Yeah, Tampa
look at was minus 370.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, they're leaning on Tampa. Then on Sunday, the Panthers are 3-point home favorites, which they've been underdogs all season long, and that's fine because they don't win when they're favored, which they won't be the rest of the season, whether they make the playoffs or not. Certainly will not be favored if they do make the playoffs. I know that for a fact. But yeah, man, looking at the keys victory for this game, what is it that Tampa has to do to end the slide and to get this win and be on the precipice where I believe if Tampa wins this, it's over for Carolina. The Bucs will win a division.
I say it just about every week, so I'm sure Locked On Bucs listeners are sick of it, but it's the basics. It's all about the basics. Run the ball, stop the run, win the turnover battle. That's what it's going to take. The Bucs had 2 different opportunities to get key takeaways against the Falcons that could have won them the game. And instead they allowed the Falcons to get a second chance, and the Falcons took advantage both times. The Panthers get takeaways in bunches. And if Carolina wins the turnover battle, pack it up. It's over. So if you're losing the turnover battle and falling behind, that's going to allow Carolina to run the ball more, which is exactly what Bucs fans don't want to see. And then it's going to put the Bucs in situations where they're one-dimensional. That's when an opportunistic defense like Carolina is going to take advantage by either bringing Baker down for sacks or taking the ball away even more than they already have. So the Bucs have been in this situation each of the last 4 years where they're having to win late in the season to secure the division. Unlike those seasons, they are not going on a run at this stage. Usually they've been on a winning streak at this point in time. They're not. They're still trending down. So the winner of this game is going to win the division. It may not be a mathematical certainty, but it will absolutely be whoever wins this game. I can't see the Bucs losing 3 straight division games and then winning back-to-back against the Dolphins and the Panthers to snatch the division away in week 18. So this is the season. Do the little things right and you're going to be okay. Do what you've been doing, and you're going to see your former offensive coordinator crowned as the head coach of the NFC South Division champion Carolina Panthers.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's can't forget about that element of this. Yeah, for Carolina, I agree. The turnovers are going to matter. And talking to Nick Scott, the starting safety on Wednesday, he mentioned that when we were talking to him in the locker room, that turnovers, that's so huge. And they had gotten 6 of them in the games against San Francisco and against the Rams. And the Rams one, that especially was such a big thing for them. And then when they beat Green Bay earlier this season, there were turnovers in that game that favored Carolina as well. So I think they've only lost one time this season when they've won the turnover battle. And they've also won twice when they have lost the turnover battle, which is actually crazy that's even been able to happen. It hadn't happened in like a decade that they had lost turnover battle in like 2 games, in back-to-back games, and then won both of those games. So yeah, they got to take care of the ball because they just cannot allow themselves to get behind the 8 ball in this game. You got to be able to find a way to run the ball, which they have been able to do effectively in some weeks, but they didn't do it last Sunday, didn't do it at all against New Orleans. And this is an opportunity to do that, especially after Atlanta had some success last Thursday against this Tampa team. And then you just got to be mature, man. Your back's against the wall. You've been doing this all season long. It feels like it's time to grow up and go take care of business. So we'll see if they can do that. And you talk about it as far as the winner of this game and the loser of this game. As far as like the stakes, we know they're enormous. If Carolina wins this week, they get Seattle next week. Without a pass rush, I have a hard time thinking they're going to beat that team. And also, let's just go off the fact that they can't handle success. So, of course, they're going to lose. But Sam, it will be a big pressure spot for him. He has just not done well at all. He's soloed himself every single time that's happened in his career. So I can't ignore that. But Jackson Smith-Njigba was awesome. That defense has been great. I just don't see Carolina beating them next week, even if it's a 10 a.m. body clock game for Seattle. So for Carolina, it's going to have to come down to winning on Sunday and then winning in week 18. Now, I do disagree. We talked about this before the show as far as Tampa goes. If Tampa loses this game, because I don't think Carolina, with the win or a loss, I don't think they're going to beat Seattle next week regardless. Now, I didn't think they're going to beat the Rams. Certainly didn't think they're going to beat the Packers. So I've been wrong before. I'll be wrong. I'll be happily wrong again and have week 18 matter. I would love for that to be the case. But like if Tampa wins this, it's basically over for Carolina because unless Tampa is going to lose, I mean, I don't think it even matters if they lose to Miami at that point in time because they would still, if they lose to Carolina, they're both 9-8. That's barring if the Panthers even beat the Seahawks. They're both 9-8, 3-3 in the division. There's no head-to-head. The division record is 3-3, and then Tampa has a common opponent. So Tampa wins this week. They win a division. That unless they'll just and you think that they can lose to Miami. Quinn Ewers, yeah, it's Quinn Ewers. God love him. He's not going to be the starting quarterback. I know there's plenty of people out there like Quinn Ewers should stay in college and get the bag. Well, he's going to be starting the final 3 games of the NFL. So congrats, Quinn Ewers, for making it to this spot. I just have a hard time believing that Quinn Ewers in the Miami Dolphins, who have said, we're punting on the rest of the season, at least on Tua, I have a hard time believing Tampa is going to lose that game. But you believe that's still a possibility.
Oh, 100%, because you don't need Tua to beat the Bucs. You don't need a quarterback that can air it out to Jalen Waddle or a quarterback that has to sit in the pocket for 3 or 4 seconds and diagnose the defense in front of him. You have Devon Achane. Like that's first and foremost, that's pretty much all you need is Devon Achane. Running the ball, catching the ball, just Devon Achane. But on top of that, you and I could line up under center for the Miami Dolphins and dump it off 3 yards to Darren Waller and just let him do his thing through the middle of the Bucs defense, because the middle of the Bucs defense is always open. That's why I brought up Tommy Tremble. Like, that dude's going to go for 100, and all it's going to be is checkdowns, and he's going to be able to turn and run untouched for 8 to 10 yards. So yeah, I going on the road against a Dolphins team that, I mean, they've won 4 of their last 5. So even though they're moving on from Tua, and maybe this is just Mike McDaniel throwing a Hail Mary to try to save his job, which I don't think he's going to be able to do. Until the Bucs show me that they're a competent football team on this side of their bye week, anybody can beat them. Titans.
Yeah. And I guess, look, that's 4 of 5. And those, I mean, they beat the Bills, which was insane. And they beat the Commanders. They beat a Saints team that neither one of these teams could beat the last 2 weeks. And of course, they beat the Jets before not looking great against the Steelers. Obviously Tampa far better than I do. I have not watched every Bucs game. I'll put my hand up and admit that. I don't have time to watch every Bucs game.
Sure.
But I think that from what I've seen from Miami and the times I've watched them, I just feel like Tampa, even if they lose this game, as hard as it would, yes, it sounds ridiculous because that would be a further of the slide they've been on. I give Tampa far greater of a chance of coming back from this loss and winning the division because they have the tiebreaker. If they didn't have the tiebreaker, they'd be a little bit different. But because they have the tiebreaker, especially, and that Carolina has to play Seattle next week. If they were playing, I guess, Arizona now, and I know they lost Arizona back in week 2, but they were playing Arizona right now next week, then I'd feel a lot better about Carolina potentially winning that game. And also the Panthers had demonstrated at any point this season that they could handle success after getting a big win, which this would be. It may not be the same level of a team like Green Bay or like LA, but it would be a huge win for them. They have shown time and time again they cannot handle success, even when they played teams like the New Orleans Saints, who were a 1-win and a 3-win team when they had faced them, and a team that had just come off of a big win the week prior against a Bucs team. So I don't know, man. I think it's it for Carolina if they don't win on Sunday. And from my seat, at least, I still think that Tampa would have a chance if they lose because they have the tiebreaker. And of course, they'd have the home game there in week 18. So for the Panthers, win on Sunday, win in week 18. For Tampa, I think you can still bounce back. That's just my thought. But, James knows y'all way better than I do. Any closing thoughts, James, before we get out of here?
Never underestimate the team that invented losing.
Oh, boy. You did say something earlier about the coolest coach in the history of the NFL. I was like, wasn't Steve Spurrier was there in Tampa once upon a time with John McKay, right? He was a pretty cool guy, like Todd Bowles.
Oh, well, I said Bowles was the calmest. Not the coolest.
Okay.
The coolest coach in Bucs history is got to be Bruce Arians, right? Like, Bruce is the epitome of cool.
Yeah.
No, Todd is just the most calm.
Yeah.
But
the old ball coach is calm every once in a while.
Yeah.
He's Stone Visor, so maybe not. So I don't know. I'm excited. I'm excited to see how this plays out. Of course, would have rather this be Carolina going for all the marbles. And if they fell, then week 18 would be a huge game. And I'm still hoping that week 18 becomes, I don't know if you want to stay up for Sunday night, but I'd love for that to be the Sunday night game. And yeah, for that to happen, Carolina will need to win this game on Sunday in all likelihood for that to be the case. So we'll see how it plays out. But yeah, do I know? Either way, we'll be back with y'all tomorrow, breaking everything down. That's going to wrap up this edition of Locked On Panthers and Locked On Bucs. We are part again the Locked On Podcast Network. Subscribe or follow the show free wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. And be sure to check me out, Julian Council and James Yarcho, over on Twitter at Julian Council and then at @JYarcho_Bucs in all caps. We'll talk to y'all on Friday, where I'm looking at Key's victory. But James is also looking to see how this team can bounce back and get a win on Sunday. All that and more coming up tomorrow on Locked On Panthers and Locked On Bucs.